Welcome back. In today's video from Pride, we're going to be going over the technique of the jab. The jab is a very important punch to learn first, not only for boxers, but also for MMA fighters, and also for people learning self-defense. If you're standing orthodox, your jab is always going to be your lead hand. If you're standing orthodox, your jab is your left hand. My left hand is the closest strike I have to land on my opponent. It's closer to my opponent than my right hand is because of my stance. If I was left-handed and I was fighting in a southpaw stance, then my right hand is my jabbing hand. My right hand is going to be closest to my opponent. It's going to be the first punch that I can land on my opponent. Learning this first is important because a lot of combinations come off the jab. Just an easy example is a 1-2. 1-2. Jab, cross. Leading with the jab, following with that right cross. The shortest distance between two objects is always going to be in a straight line. Being that the jab is a straight punch is always going to be a shorter distance than any of the other left strikes that I can throw, being at arm's reach. Of course, if an opponent is really close, we're head to head, I can scoop a short uppercut under the chin. But being at arm's reach, if I was to try to land the uppercut, I'm traveling a further distance with my strike than as if I threw it straight forward and just used the jab. A lot of times fights are determined by how well you use your jab. Depending on how well you use your jab, you really control the pace of that fight. You can keep an opponent off you with the jab. You can really mount an assault with the jab. Now let's get into the technique of the jab. Whether you're a beginner boxer or an advanced boxer, it's always important to focus on the basics and focus on technique no matter what punch we're talking about. We're going to focus on the jab. Nice and relaxed. You want to keep the elbow in when you're in your stance. When you throw the jab, you don't want that elbow to come out too far. You want that jab to go straight forward. You're going to turn the fist. Keeping it real relaxed. Exhale on the strikes. Side view. Real relaxed. Not a lot of body involved in the jab unless you're moving forward, pivoting to the outside. When you're just standing squared and you throw a jab, not a lot of body, just the arm. So to improve your jab, you want to start off shadow boxing your jab. Always make sure you're using your reach, stretching that punch out all the way, and snapping it back to the starting position, right back to the jaw. This way, after you throw each strike, you can defend as well. Focus on that with your shadow boxing while in front of the mirror. Keeping the elbow in, bringing the hand back, turning the fist all the way. You'll notice I keep my hands loose when I'm shadow boxing. That's to prevent from tightening up. A tight fighter is not an effective fighter. You don't want to be too tight here because you're not going to be loose enough to roll with punches or to parry shots or to get any head movement. You want to stay loose on the body. So when you shadow box, if you feel you're too tight, you're tensing up, you want to relax those hands while turning the fist, while doing your shadow boxing. Focus on the jab, keep that elbow in, snap the jab back to the jaw. Shadow box it, get comfortable with it before moving on to anything else. Once you feel comfortable shadow boxing the jab, you can land shots with the jab on the heavy bag, on the century bob, on the double end bag, focus pads, someone holding the mitts for you. You can land jabs. Always watch your distance. Make sure that you're landing your shot before full extension. That way full extension pushes through your target. So you always want to land with a little bit of bend still left in that elbow before following through to your target. Anytime you throw a punch that's too far away from you, you're going to outstretch and you can hyperextend your arm. Now, once you're comfortable throwing the jab, just staying stationary, staying in one spot, you're throwing the jab, you've done a lot of shadow boxing with it, you hit the mitts, you hit the heavy bag or the century bob, you want to be able to move on to pushing forward with the jab, doing a step jab. So I got good angle of my feet here. You're going to load up that back foot. You want to push off that back foot when you jab. Push forward off the back foot, push back off that front foot. Small steps, very small. Good push. As soon as I push with that back foot, jab goes. With your footwork, you always want to make sure if you push and step an inch with the back foot, you only want to step an inch with that front foot. This way your fighting stance doesn't change. So a step jab is one way to increase the power in your jab. Not only are you closing the gap on your opponent, moving to the inside, moving into punching range, but you're also increasing the power in your jab by pushing off the ground. Power has to come from the legs, from the ground. So by pushing off that back foot and stepping with that jab, you're going to increase that power and the impact from the jab. To have good success with your jab, you always want to keep real relaxed. Real relaxed on the body, real relaxed on that jab. This way, your opponent doesn't see that jab coming. When an opponent doesn't see the punch coming, more likely to land. If you give a tell that you're about to throw that certain strike, more chances he's going to be able to react to it and cover up. So the key to having more success with the jab is to have a real relaxed jab. Focus on the speed, focus on the power, but also focus on the timing of being able to throw it naturally without having to load up before throwing. If you have a reach advantage over your opponent, it's important to have a really good jab because you can use the jab to keep your opponent off of you. The second he comes into range, the first strike he's going to be in range of is always going to be your jab. Second he steps into range, you can stick him with the jab and keep him off of you. Keep him right at the end of your reach. And now if you have less reach than your opponent, the jab is very important as well. You have to step into range to get in range to be able to strike your opponent. You don't want to move forward without throwing anything. You want to move forward and give your opponent something to deal with. So by having a real good step jab is a good way to get yourself in range to be able to land other shots on your opponent. Now the next thing you want to work on is angling to the outside. Step into the outside with your jab. We're going to focus on that push forward with the jab. Pushing off that back foot, moving forward. Now, same concept, still pushing off that back foot. We're just going to take a slight step to the left with our lead foot instead of going straight forward. When I push off that back foot, the jab goes, the front foot goes, and the back foot follows. Now I have an angle. Circling your opponent. Pushing off the back foot, snap the jab. You're still getting more power in your jab. You're not going in a straight line. You're getting the head off the line offensively. So you always want to focus on that jab. You really want to train your jab. The jab can do so many different things for you when you're fighting. It can keep an opponent off you, or it can set up a lot of combinations. But the better it is, it can be a knockout punch as well. Now we're going to work on countering with the jab. If an opponent throws a jab at me and I parry the jab, I can counter with a jab. I parry that jab. I push it to go over my left shoulder. After doing that, I counter with a jab, but I want it to come quick. As soon as I catch, I shoot. Now you want to work on jabbing to the body. You never want to stand tall and throw down to the body. Remember, straight line. Shoulder to the fist. Always a nice straight line. So to jab my opponent to the body, I'm going to use my legs. I'm going to get low and jab straight to the body. Get low, jab straight to the body. What's happening to my head? My head is moving. My opponent doesn't have a steady target to attack. So as I go down low, I jab to the body. I'm also moving my head, changing levels, making a hard target for my opponent. Lowering with the legs. After practicing this with shadow boxing on the mitts, on the heavy bag, you'll develop some speed with it. Another counter you can work on using the jab is a slip to the left. If I slip his cross, I can come back with a jab. So anytime I move the head to that left side to get out of the way of his right cross, I can come back with a jab. If I'm close enough, I can throw the left hook. But you're not always in the right position that you want to be in, so you want to be able to throw both. If I have a little bit of distance, that's when I'm going to use the jab. If I'm in tight, that's when I'm going to use the left hook. Now, repetition is key for a boxer, for an MMA fighter, for self-defense. Always use repetition to really perfect that strike that you're working on. In this case, you're working on your jab. It's one of the first ones you really want to perfect before moving on to any other punches. You never want to lose focus on that jab. Having a really good jab could be the difference between victory or defeat. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to Pride Martial Arts, turn on notifications for all future videos, and keep training that jab.